Good day, all you people out there in the sane and rational world. This is Paul Elam with A Voice for Men, and I am sitting with the one and only founder of the first men's rights-based political party in the Western world, Mr. Mike Buchanan, coming to us from the UK. Hi, Mike. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm very well, Paul, and how are you?
I'm doing good. I can't complain too much. I got to tell you, getting excited about ICMI 16.
Yeah, I mean, there's a real buzz happening, and I know there's a few things we need to talk about on the conference, but no, I just it's all looking as good as it possibly could about 3 months out.
Yep, it's looking great. Mike just also scored a great big coup, I think, getting Philip Davies, an MP, to speak. We had a senator from Canada speak at the first ICMI, and now we have an MP for the second one. I don't think it gets any better than that, and I think this is onward and upward in best fashion to get legitimacy and more of a voice in the mainstream for these issues, which we still have a long way to go in order to get. And we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about the other surprise speaker, which I did not expect to happen. I got to tell you, Mike is something. But what I want to start what I'm curious about is not only is Mike planning this massive conference representing how many, 16 countries from around the world, or was it more than that?
16 at the moment, yeah.
Yep, 16 countries represented from around the planet at ICMI 16. Not only is he planning and executing all that, he's also been out there tearing up a storm on the male genital mutilation issue with protests. And so before we get to the juicy details about ICMI 16, which is getting more exciting by the day, I need to ask about these protests, Mike. You've been kicking up a storm out there. What's been going on?
Yes, it's been going very well. It probably bears repeating. I mean, some of these things, Paul, I'm sure you feel the same. You know, you repeat things 1,000 times, and then you'll still get people who didn't know the things. But it does bear repeating that MGM is undoubtedly illegal in the UK, but the criminal justice system doesn't pursue the mutilators. Now, I'm told by a number of people that the situation is the same in the States and Canada. When you actually look at it, the criminal justice system doesn't go after the people it should go after. So we've so far had 3 anti-MGM protests. The first was outside the Conservative Party conference last October, and for those not in the UK, the Conservative Party is currently in government. The second protest was in Parliament Square last International Men's Day, at the same time that Philip Davies MP was holding the first ever parliamentary debate on men's issues, in which he mentioned male circumcision briefly at the end. The third was held recently in Luton, outside the Thornhill Clinic, the leading private MGM clinic in the UK. It was the largest ever anti-MGM protest in the UK, so far as we can tell, by some margin. Now,
Oh, wow.
Luton has a 25% Muslim population, but we encountered virtually no antagonism at all. Indeed, we had a number of very amicable and useful discussions with Muslims that we met. We recently announced that we'll be holding at least 3 more MGM protests before the conference, and perhaps even more. The first will be in Golders Green, an area of North London best known for its large Jewish community. Now, we'll be protesting outside a clinic where a Martin Harris works as a doctor and a Moyle. And he was recently placed on your known genital mutilators directory.
That would be at neonatalcutting.org.
Yeah. I mean, a wonderful thing, and the I'll have a few words to say a bit later about the really quite interesting impact that directory is having on the ground here.
If you don't mind, Mike, one of the things that I want to bring up, and you and I have privately discussed this a number of times, and it is finally we're beginning to see, and I think a lot of it is because of your work, that we're finally starting to see the anti-male genital mutilation voice emerge in the men's rights movement. Because, you know, there was some resistance to that for some years. And now we're finally starting to see, after maybe educating a lot of people, that this is not just a cosmetic snip, that this is actually the removal, the amputation of an organ of 20,000 nerve endings that creates scar tissue that behaves differently for the rest of the individual's life. I mean, the research on this is overwhelming. As you pointed out, it is clearly illegal. And I believe that's true in the United States too. I do not believe, I believe that it's covered in assault statutes.
Yeah, exactly the same here, Paul. Exactly the same.
So this is an immoral, illegal procedure. And I'm sad to say, I mean, I'm not complaining about it, but even the men's rights community has had a while taking to catch up with what MGM is and why it's an important men's issue. And so I just want to give you some kudos for the great work out there. And I want you to know that AVFM's behind you. We're continuing to do our work at neonatalcutting.org, putting doctors on that registry, and we're not going to stop. Because, as you and I have discussed, this is, I believe, a winnable battle.
It totally is, Paul. It was one of the reasons that we took it on. I mean, there are, God knows, enough battles out there that are not winnable with the resources available to us. But MGM, we think, is. And to go back to your point about some ambivalence on the part of MRAs, I think this is a red pill of its own.
Yes,
it's. I mean, there's just so many great MRAs who a year or two back didn't get it on MGM. Some of them cut themselves, were circumcised themselves. But now I think the awareness of just how horrendous, human rights assault this is, on just so many levels. Anyway, I'll sort of come to that a little bit later.
And that's what it is. I mean, and I got to say, as a man that was mutilated at birth, I lived with this my whole life, thinking that's normal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I saw in the shower in high school. When we played sports, and it just, occasionally I saw a guy that was uncircumcised, but I didn't think about it, right? It's just not something that entered my mind, and it wasn't until I started reading the literature, and especially the long-term impact. And this is what I think so many people don't get. It's not just the loss of sensitivity, but the incidence of depression and anxiety and sexual dysfunction in middle age in circumcised populations is drastically higher than in uncut men. And so anyway.
I agree, Paul. There's not a single argument I'm aware of for, if you like, on medical grounds for doing MGM that wouldn't be equally valid for FGM. But of course, nobody would ever use those arguments for FGM. So,
absolutely.
The double standard is so stark. It's almost beyond anything else, I think, that we fight about.
You see, I can't even. To me, the practice is so abhorrent. And as you know, I write satire pieces on a lot of very sensitive subjects. Yeah. I wouldn't even write a piece of satire about FGM.
No.
Because I just couldn't make myself satirize something that sadistic and wrong. But it's a huge business in the West, big money in it.
Indeed.
And so anyway, kudos for that. I just wanted to say thank you for that work. I'm looking forward to hearing the reports on the future protests, and I'm really looking forward to the day that society wakes up and, for God's sake, starts to realize we can't be sexually mutilating little boys for whatever reason.
I agree. And a tip of the hat to you guys and Gary Costanza in particular. I mean, I'd love to see the faces of these people in the UK, these doctors and Moyles in the UK, who on the Monday they're going about their business, and on the Tuesday there's a political party that's named them, and there's an outfit in the States that have put them on the known genital mutilators directory. You'd like to be a fly on the wall to see the expressions of those guys on that day, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes, you would. and I want to echo your sentiments about Gary Costanza. He is AVFM's director of activism for anti-male genital mutilation. This guy's a workhorse. There's not, we don't have huge resources, but he's a guy that works with everything he has to get this message out there. And he's very much appreciated. I hope he makes it to the conference, speaking of that.
Oh, it would be great if he could. It'd be great if he could. Because I mean, one of the things that he's so good at, he doesn't just link. I mean, I think there'd be a service in just linking to these people's websites, but he picks apart the detail. And as I've done that kind of thing in the past, and I know you have, and that doesn't take 10 minutes.
It doesn't.
It takes hour after hour of really, some work.
Because all these physicians and all these clergy that are mutilating babies, almost to everyone that I've seen, puts out outright lies and disinformation about the procedure.
Yes, they do. They do.
And that's got to stop. I mean, it's funny, once you recognize the truth about something, people tend to not want to do it. And until you force them, they're going to continue to lie. But anyway, we're sort of time limited today. I just wanted to give you a salute for that. But I'm really excited to talk about ICMI 16. And just for those of you who don't know, this is something that started in 2014 when we had the first ICMI just outside of Detroit, Michigan. Mike was there, spoke at that conference. So were a lot of other people. We had 15 people. It was an international affair. It was a blast. It was a great time, even though there were very stressful circumstances. We had to change venues at the last minute. All kinds of things that could go wrong did go wrong. And it still turned out to be just an incredibly uplifting event with a community spirit and a lot of fellowship that was amazing. Wouldn't you say so?
I would. I mean, it will be seen one day as a historic turning point for men and boys, I believe, Paul. There's no question about that. It was of historical importance.
I agree. I think it was, and I think this one is too, because what Mike has managed to do is, like I said, put together an array of people from 16 different countries. We have everybody from Eastern Europe to India to Australia, Canada, the United States, the UK, of course, Scandinavia is represented across the board. This lineup of speakers is amazing, and these are all people that really know their stuff too. And of course, you have stellar people like Karen Strawn coming to speak. Sage Gerard will be there, representatives from the Honey Badger, and my goodness, people just in the audience, people like Peter Lloyd and others that will be there, that you'll be able to meet and spend time with, socializing after the speeches. By the way, I'm going to drop this probably 5 or 10 times before we end this conversation. In the low bar, there is a place. I'll leave Mike to tell you about his goals, but I know that there's a goal that Mike wants to reach so he can do something else even better with the conference. And there's a handful of tickets that need to be sold for that. So there's a link in the low bar to go in and get your seat right now. We're less than 3 months out. It is time to make your plans, your travel plans. It's time to get your seat secured, because this is something I don't think you want to miss. I know that the 14 turned out that way. I can't wait. I got my plane ticket just the other day. I'm so looking forward to this.
Indeed. Well, I mean, there's not much more than 12 weeks to go now, but only 7 weeks before we're planning to stop selling the tickets, Paul, which is Sunday the 5th of June. So we're not planning to sell tickets at the door. And the gap between ending ticket sales and the conference starting is basically so that we can sort out some high security ID badges. So I would say to people, if you want to come, you really don't want to wait too much longer before you order a ticket. And
so that was the 7th of next month, you said, or 7th of
sorry, the 5th of June, Sunday the 5th of June.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. 5th of June.
At the moment the final day. Yeah. Now we've had just a terrific response to the news of our two speakers, who you mentioned, Philip Davis MP, a Conservative MP, the only one of 650 MPs who ever speak out on issues relating specifically to men and boys, and then we have Mark Pearson, who may not be so well known a name, but he was the poor guy. He's a 51-year-old contemporary artist, and he was charged with sexually assaulting a 60-something actress walking in the opposite direction at Waterloo Station. The whole thing captured by CCTV cameras. Now, the images weren't very clear, but it's not even certain the two touched each other, even by the low standards of the Crown Prosecution Service. The case
Which
was
were as low. I mean, the Crown went below low on that one.
Oh,
Mike.
it was truly extraordinary. And the prosecution tried to pervert it's quite clear now, tried to pervert the course of justice by slowing down the video at the point that the two passed each other to give the impression that there was a longer time for this, non-existent sexual assault to have taken place.
I'm still trying to figure out how he managed to sexually assault this woman in front of all these people while she was still walking.
Yeah, but plus he had his he was holding a newspaper in one hand and holding on to a shoulder bag with the other.
The whole thing, folks, if you see the video, and also you'll see on A Voice for Men right now, there is the announcement about Phil Davies, and I'm sorry I keep forgetting the gentleman's name.
Mark Pearson.
Mark Pearson, who was the falsely accused in this case. There is an announcement from Mike on the site about that. But if you got to pick one link to click on the one in the low bar to this video and go get your seat for this and join us.
Yep. We were pleased that the crowdfunder for flights and hotels for Karen Strawn, Sage Gerard, Janet Bloomfield, and Hannah Wallen met its 9,000 target, I think, in about a week, whereas I think they've given it 46 days. So that was pretty impressive. And
yes.
We're also delighted that Hannah will be the official recorder of the conference in terms of both video and stills photography.
Yes, and tell us more about that. Matter of fact, I'm going to add a couple of things to that for you once you're done. What is the situation with recording for people to know?
Yeah, we're at the moment planning a press conference on the first morning. That's the Friday morning, and the press will be allowed to take a video or still images. But as a result of some discussions with quite a few people who ordered tickets and wanted to order tickets, there will be no video or still photography permitted in either the conference or the balcony next to it during the conference times.
Okay, so don't take video, folks.
But there'll be plenty of opportunities to sort of to take photographs and videos and whatever away from the room. But people kind of wanted. I hesitate to use the phrase "a safe space," Paul, given what we do.
Mike, whatever you do, please think of another. There's got to be a euphemism out there that doesn't involve puppy videos and peanut butter sandwiches.
Indeed. But we don't want people triggered, do we?
No, that's 2 in 1, Mike.
I think I've run out of my list now. But no, I mean, people wanted some privacy, Paul. They wanted a private space. So
they want to know that they're not going to be photographed and have it distributed over the internet, and that is exactly as it should be. I will let you know, however, that I am bringing my video equipment and sound equipment with me, and I'll be working with Hannah too, and we're going to be doing a lot of the after event activities, the social activities. I'm going to be conducting interviews with individuals. We're going to get all this on video and do the very best possible job that we can for it, because one of the things I really want people to see, Mike, and this is really important, is that the speeches are great. I mean, these are great speakers. I mean, come on, Aaron Pitsey. I mean, if you look at the list of people Mike has lined up, it's just a phenomenal list. They're going to be great speakers. But where the real action happens at conferences is after hours. That's when the real fun starts, and when you have so many people of like mind, of people that often out in the regular real world in their lives feel pretty alone in their beliefs, right? Because they're not so widespread that we have chapters of live meetings across the world yet. But when people finally get together with all these people that they've known and listened to and maybe talked to online for years, there's just something absolutely magic that happens. And I'm hoping to capture some of that on a lengthy video record to produce some videos for people who unfortunately can't come, might enjoy some of it, and might be able to see the importance of what is really good for people when they go to these conferences.
Yeah, yeah. No, I endorse every word of that, Paul. Now, apart from Hannah, we have someone else who will be taking. In fact, this is a guy who was a professional maker of videos and editor for a good many years. So we have someone else who will be taking video recordings of the 22 presentations, and we'll probably be, or we will be putting them up on YouTube as soon as possible, and you know, and handing them to anybody within reason who asks for the material. It's probably important to say that we're not planning to have internet streaming of the conference at this stage for a variety of reasons. One reason being that the conference has to be self-financing. I mean, that you know, if we don't leap that hurdle, nothing happens. And some people told us that they wouldn't buy tickets if the event were live streamed on the internet for free or a modest price. So unfortunately, that has had to go. I would have loved to have made, you know, the entire conference free on the internet to the world. But I don't think that we could have made the thing self-financing, Paul. I mean, I think in future that will be viable, you know, at ICMI 17, 18, 19, 20, and so on. But it's not at the moment looking like it's going to happen this time.
Well, for what it's worth, I think it's a very wise decision to go that direction, because you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of times, and trust me, I get people's frustrations when they see a price that they feel is expensive for tickets, and you consider time off work. I get it. I mean, people don't come to the men's movement because they're wealthy. It's usually because they have been financially devastated. So this is a difficult area to walk. But the thing is, it's always been true. If we're going to have these conferences, which are vital to any movement, on the ground activism, on the ground face-to-face meetings, face time between activists, opportunities to make connections and to network like this are essential to any movement, and they can't happen if we can't finance them. So I think that's really a smart decision, and I hope someday too that we can just, you know, pull out all the stops and hire a production company to come in and, you know, and pay them whatever ungodly fee that they want to broadcast this all over the internet for, you know, $1 a pop. But we're just not there yet. The movement needs more involvement and more support than that.
Yep, I think that's right. And we recently put up a piece on the conference website where people can order polo shirts and T-shirts with the conference logo. Worldwide delivery is available, and J4MB gets a magnificent £1 for every shirt sold.
Oh wow, that's a whole lot of money. A whole pound.
So if we can shift 10,000 shirts, we're really laughing.
See, Mike, I knew you were profiteering off of this.
Indeed. To go back to your point about things, you know, the reasons that we want to sell more tickets, we're quite keen to hire a big room which is adjacent to the conference room, and it'll be just wonderful for things like breakouts and meetings and interview, all you know, just 100 different things. So you know, it'd be good to sell a few more tickets just for that. And I don't know how much longer we got, Paul, but I'd just like to say one final thing on MGM.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. I mentioned that we'll be protesting outside the clinic where Martin Harris works in Golders Green, but we'll also be protesting the same day outside the offices of the Jewish Chronicle in the same area. Which is as I understand it, the British publication catering for the Jewish community. Now, they've printed an article criticizing the protest and describing it as bizarre, which I suppose is a fairly bizarre description of what we're doing. And Stephen Pollard, the editor, went onto Twitter to call me a bigot. Yes, it's kind of interesting. Now, there have been people in the...
It is bizarre. How strange that you don't want babies mutilated. Mike, I don't know what gave you this propensity.
I know, it's sick, really. Now, there have been people in the anti-MGM and the wider MRA community who've questioned the advisability of protesting in the Jewish area. They claim that there are people working in the Jewish community to bring about an end to MGM, and I'm talking the UK specifically here, Paul. But I've seen no evidence of that work, and they've certainly, as far as I can see, had no measurable impact. My invitation to these people to contact me so far through third parties have come to nothing. There are also some claims that feminists have been working on MGM in conjunction with FGM, And of course, that's just laughable to anybody with even a basic grasp of gender politics.
To me, Mike, I'm just going to be brutally frank. This is the same old story. Yes, people in the Jewish community and the Muslim community and the Christian community have been working hard on MGM, just like feminists have been working really hard on men's issues. And I knew that when we started pointing out some rabbis, and I have gotten a couple of pieces of mail calling me an anti-Semite, because one of the people or two of the people that we put on the directory happened to be rabbis doing circumcisions. Not too many people complained about the doctors. But folks, I'm just going to say this. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. If you're mutilating children, you're in the wrong, morally, ethically, legally, every way possible. And we don't pick on anybody because of their religion. It's just a plain fact, though, and I'm only speaking for myself and ABFM here, not for any of Mike's efforts, though he may agree. I don't accept your religion as an excuse for this practice. I don't accept that. So it's if you're doing it, we're going to list you. We don't care if you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian. We don't care if you're an atheist doctor that's doing it just for the money. Doesn't make any difference. If you're doing it, we're going to put you on the directory, and we're going to keep doing that. And send me all the emails you want and call me an anti-Semite. I know better.
Indeed, indeed. So at this stage, Paul, I can see no reason to pull the Golders Green protest. The idea that we'd pull the protest in response to the lie that we're anti-Semitic is plain ridiculous. It surely, it doesn't need saying that we're not, but we have to be prepared to engage with those who claim we are and challenge them to prove their allegation. And of course, they won't be able to. So with that weapon, rendered ineffective, what else do they have?
Nothing. It's the same basic objection of saying that of feminists saying that we're misogynist because they're speaking the issues. And folks, if you study up on circumcision, which is a euphemism for male genital mutilation, if you study up on the science of it, you would sit and scratch your head and wonder how we ever came to having to protest this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the arguments, as far as I can see, for MGM or, used for MGM, I mean, fall into three camps, Paul, I think. There's medical, cultural, and religious. To my mind, none of the three stand up to even the slightest examination. This is at the end of the day, this is an anachronism which shouldn't exist in 2016. It just shouldn't. And especially I'd say especially in a pretty secular country like the UK. But it is just, it has to end. And the idea that the Jewish community or any community is somehow going to be persuaded to drop it makes no sense to me. I mean, there's so much psychological investment, Paul, in continuing this. There's financial incentives. There's like 20 reasons why, that it's going to have to be stopped from outside.
And then there is the traumatic stress of those who have been mutilated, who end up being physicians or rabbis.
Yes.
And they have a built-in, and there's research on this, folks. Go to neonatalcutting.org, click on the research page. There's links there that explains the bias in so much of the research that's quote, I put this in scare quotes, pro-circumcision, comes from circumcised researchers with an investment in a particular outcome. And there is a big variance in the difference between those who've been circumcised. Their outcomes in research are skewed versus uncircumcised researchers. And it sounds crazy, but you know what? It's true. People tend to defend and not want to think about traumatic things that happen to them. And they tend to find reasons to excuse them. We see this with all other sorts of trauma, and this is no different.
Yep, that's it. That's it in a nutshell, Paul. I agree.
But we're going to keep working on it. But anyway, we are about out of time. I just want to remind everybody one more time, there is a link in the low bar. Get your ticket for ICMI 16. Join us in London from wherever you are in the world. And especially for those that it's easy to travel. I've been to the UK before. I know they happen to have a really good mass transit system. If you can get there, this is worth showing up at. And we will be there with bells on, ready to get serious about activism, about the subjects that all the speakers will be speaking about. And I want to add this, Mike, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on the subject that I'm going to talk about, because that's one of the things when we talk about MGM or any of these other issues. I fully believe until we have a more honest and direct cultural dialogue about the subject of gynocentrism, it makes it very hard to make any progress on this. We have to have that talk.
I agree, Paul. It's too easy, I think, to fixate on feminism, and God knows I've spent more time than most in doing that.
I'm guilty too.
Because it's a kind of easy target, and it's a powerful target, but it's an easy target. And gynocentrism is like a fog, isn't it? But I mean, some of the stuff, the stuff you've been putting out recently, Paul, about gynocentrism, it's transformed my sort of understanding of it. And we you know, it's another elephant in the room, isn't it? It's not just feminism.
Oh,
I mean,
it's huge.
I mean, gynocentrism is the soil in which feminism exists. It grows, and without people getting that, you know, they get nothing.
Peter Wright put it this way, and I think it was a brilliant analogy. When you fight a fire, the way they train firefighters is that you put the base of the fire out, right? If you're just spraying retardant at the top of the flames, you know, you'll retard the flames a little bit at the top, but it really doesn't do anything to the fire itself. It keeps burning. And feminism is the very top flames of the fire. Gynocentrism is the base. And this is where it gets sticky for some people, because they think, oh, gynocentrism, you're going to talk about we need to ignore women's issues. No, we don't. We need to pay attention to women's issues. But we've reached a place in this society where the focus on women's issues has become psychotic culturally.
Yeah.
And that is gynocentrism. And when you're so fixated on one set of issues that if you say we've got, like in the US, we've got 2,700 some odd shelters for battered women, and maybe 3 for men, or that are part-time for men. When you have that level of lopsided approach to a problem that roughly affects both populations equally, then you have a problem that you're handling in a very neurotic way. And the core of that neurosis is gynocentrism, and we got to start talking about it, and that's going to be my talk at ICMI.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Just finally on that, there's a British blogger on sort of gender political issues, just outstanding in my view. A guy called William Collins.
Yeah,
and he published a piece a day or two ago on the empathy gap, which is an expression he's used a few times, and a few people asked him to expand on that. And it's I mean, as always with William Collins, it's a truly amazing piece of work. And he basically sort of goes down the road of speculating on the evolutionary source of the empathy gap, but in more depth than I've known anyone kind of touch on that subject. So I strongly recommend people check that out.
Mike, if you will ping me a link to that, I'll put it in the low bar to this talk, so people can see that right after they buy their tickets.
Otherwise, yeah, they must. we need a few more people.
Okay, we're on the honor system here, folks. You can't read the article until you buy your ticket for ICMI, but we will trust you to do that. Mike, is there anything else that you wanted to address before we sign off on this talk? And I'm letting everybody know we will be back more than once before the event.
No, that's I think that's fine for today, Paul. Thanks for your support, and the support we've had. For what, 3 years now from you guys. It's really appreciated.
Hey man, you know, you're the heroes here, man. You guys you in particular are doing amazing work, and I know you're not doing it alone. You've got some great people over there. I'm glad to see this happen. I'm excited to be going, looking forward to, and can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to coming to the UK from Texas during the month of July. It will be 20, 25 degrees cooler, and that'll be just fine with me. But anyway, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this. Get your tickets for ICMI 16 right away. They stop selling June 5th. And after that, you won't be able to get them. So let's get them quick, and let's get this party on the road. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Wish everybody a good day and say we'll see you next time.